Hello.
Hey,
How are you guys?
hi.
You ever been in one of those situations where you're trying to figure out if something should become a priority in your life? Things start out temporary, and there's always that space to try, fail, and adjust. But how do you decide what gets your resources? It's what we're talking about today, so hang out and chat with us. Well, welcome to thoughtraid, where we take thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Tim, and this is Brandon Brown. He's Brandon Brown.
Yes.
Yeah, today we're talking about transitioning from temporary to decision as far as priorities go, something to that effect. This has been kind of a real topic for the two of us because there's a lot of stuff that we're leaning into being self-employed in different endeavors. And for you guys too, and for us as well, we've all been in positions where we try new things and then we have to evaluate, is this something that's going to be a consistent standard in our life?
Yeah.
And that's a really confusing process for a lot of people. And it has been for me, at least. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But
Moments.
yeah, it's just one of those situations where we feel like failure is, I don't know, it's just failure's life-threatening, it seems, you know? And it doesn't seem like there's often a lot of comfortable and respectable space to try new things. But when you think about priorities in your life, Brandon, is it a jumbled mess, or can you identify this, these are priorities?
Well, I mean, presently, I think it's decently easy to figure out what is and is not a priority, but there was times in my life where it wasn't. Like in this moment, certain friendships are priorities to me. Thought rate is a priority to me. Making sure my bills are paid is a priority to me. So those priorities are decently straight. But you go back just last year, and I couldn't figure out exactly which relationships in my life should have been a priority because I thought that I was omnipresent for some reason. Even though I logically knew that I wasn't omnipresent, I sure thought I was because I kept trying to give everyone equal amounts of attention and did not possess equal amounts of energy to give to every person.
Yeah, I remember that too, because you were in this space where it was like you had that realization and then you dialed back a little bit. And there was this weird feeling you had like, well, okay, I'm always pursuing people and I'm putting a lot of mental faculties, mental energy, and mental resources into that. And when I stop doing that, they're not doing that to me. And it was just this realization of, oh, they're not prioritizing me the way I'm prioritizing them. That was tough for you.
Well, I mean, that necessarily wasn't difficult for me, really. What was more difficult was that I felt like I was not doing my part in certain way. I knew that some people were just not going to reach out to me. That didn't bother me that certain people didn't reach out to me as much as I reached out to them. I was just concerned that because I wasn't reaching out to them, it wouldn't say that I was like a bad friend or something of that nature, or wasn't doing all that I could for ministry or something of that nature. So that it was more an internal pain than it was external for me. Like there was some people that I didn't want to spend time with, and when I dialed back from that, it was kind of a relief. And there's other people that I was not so sure about and all that kind of stuff. So it was less that like, oh, these people weren't making me a priority in their life. Like I didn't care if they were or not, because the way I approach relationships, I do appreciate people inviting me into their lives, but I'm so much more used to my part in it of inviting them out to places and doing things. But there's only so many people that I can and want to do that with specifically. So it was just making sure that I wasn't a bad person by dialing back how much time I was spending with people.
Yeah, but that process of trying new things, I wrote my notes, the freedom to try new things, test to see if it aligns with where you want to go. The question I want to ask right here is, what are priorities before we identify them as priorities? So for all these things in your lives, guys, you wake up and you think, okay, what am I going to spend my resources on? And just to clear that up, when I say resources, I'm talking about thought life. I'm talking about emotional energy. I'm talking about finances. I'm talking about time. Those are all resources that we have, and we have to decide how we spend them, because if we don't decide that, something else decides that for us.
Yes.
Right? So what are priorities before we identify them as a priority? How would you define that, Brandon?
Well, I mean, I guess trying to figure out what is priorities, what should be your main focus is, first you have like the immediate, this is going to make or break the best of my life. So like if you have bills to pay, that's going to be a priority to take care of, because if you don't take care of that priority, then things are going to be taken away from you.
Well, before that, I was talking more so, what I'm thinking about is like, as I transitioned into being an adult, there were certain things that I took over with, when at first it was like, oh, this is kind of exciting. This is new. I've never had this responsibility before. And then I had to evaluate for myself, okay, is this my priority, or is this something I'm just playing around with? Like, for instance, driving. You know, when I got my license, it was exciting. I had never done that before, you know, and I didn't realize that there was a cost associated with making that a priority, and what I mean by that is I didn't realize I had to pay car insurance, pay for a car, maintaining the car. That's one of those things where it's like, I know I'm supposed to do this, but I don't realize the full extent of it until you get it, right? Because back then it was just exciting. The concept of being able to hop in a car, take a girl on a date, drive somewhere, get a thing of milk from the grocery store. That was exciting, you know? But now that I know that it's a necessity for me to go places and do things that I need to do to accomplish things in my life, I have to make it a priority. So if my check engine light comes on, my parents aren't going to fix that for me because my parents aren't here.
Yeah.
You know? And so I have to spend more resources on maintaining that, because it's well, no pun intended, a vehicle that's going to support me in the different places I'm going.
Yes.
You know, so as we transition into that, what are our priorities before we identify them as priorities? Like, how do you...
Oh, so you want me to list things that are priorities whether we realize it or not? Is that what you're asking?
Well, what exactly are they? Are they inclinations? Are they desires? Are they just means of excitement? Like,
what is a priority in general?
But no, before you identify it as a priority, like, this is something I need to spend money on, right? Like a relationship. Before you identify somebody as your girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or fiance or whatever, they're not really a priority. They're just something you're testing out. You know, it's temporary. And I kind of want to feel that out a little bit more, because, you know, something is either a priority or it's not. And I'm going to talk more about what that not is. Like, how do you enter into a space where you're just testing it, and like, what does that feel like, what does that look like, etc.?
There's a lot of questions you're throwing at me.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start or what exactly we're focusing in on.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with this. How do you test to see if something aligns with where you want to go, whether it's a relationship, a hobby, job, etc.?
Well, I mean, it's got to be something that is life-giving, and that doesn't necessarily mean always like a feeling per se, because a job is not necessarily something I feel excited about per se, although this is one I do, but I mean, you know, in general. But it's life-giving, because if I don't go to the said job, I'm not going to make money to take care of other things that are important in my life. But in relationship standpoint, you know, life-giving relationship is someone who builds me up, someone who challenges my thinking, someone who accepts me for who I am, someone who is patient with me and knows who I am and how I do things, is not just trying to like constantly frustrate everything I ever try to do, and it's never good enough. Like, you know, just life-giving, you know, recognizing what's life-giving in your life and what's detracting. You know, God's talking about he's presented before you life and death. Choose life. And making all these banging sounds is probably not good for a microphone. Anyways, you know, choose life. So I think that's a theme. You know, what takes priority? What's giving you life? Who's giving you life? And it's not just a constant, like, take, because sometimes there are people in your life that you have to give, but there's still life in that. I could think of a few examples of people that I'm not really receiving much from them per se, as much as I'm giving, but I'm still getting life out of the mentorship or relationship with the person. And I don't mind who they are. It doesn't bother me. So I have lots of patience for them, because I think that's another part of also figuring out what's a priority. If you're just constantly intaking and you're not giving, that's stagnation. That's a pond that gets full of, it's a cesspool. It gets algae, yuck. Mosquitoes everywhere.
Well, as you're going into this, guys, the title of the thing today is, should something be a priority? And I think it's really important to maintain a perspective of just being willing to try, fail, and adjust without thinking, oh, because I failed once, or because this is not something I want, or it's not something that's aligned with where I'm going, I should stop trying. You have to be in this space where you're willing to try new things. Like,
yes.
We did a live stream with Chelsea Cordell about intimacy and commitment and the relationship between those two, specifically with regards to relationships. And she said that dating is nothing more than trying somebody on to see if they fit.
The way that's said, though, the way that I feel like that wording could be a little better.
Well, that's what she said.
It makes the person sound a little more like an object.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what it's like initially, and that's what I'm trying to tease out, because before something is a priority to you, it's just something else out there in the world. Like, if you are single, your mate is out there somewhere. The object permanence just hasn't kicked in. Like, there's maybe that's not the right term. They're just, you don't acknowledge that they're there. And when you don't acknowledge that they're there, you don't acknowledge the value that they have, because that value is not attached to a person, place, or thing, right? And so as you're going through this stuff, it's like the retail principle. If a customer holds on to something long enough, I think it's like 5 minutes, they get a sense of ownership over it, and they're more likely to buy it. Same thing with this. You go through different jobs, you go through different relationships, you go through different vehicles or whatever, and you're just trying to think to yourself, okay, does this align with where I want to go, right? Does this fit, essentially? And sometimes when we go through 3 or 4 things and we're like, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, we think to ourselves, man, I'm just going to stop trying. And then the world starts making the decisions for us. And we have to be really careful for that. We have to maintain a heart position of being willing to try and fail and try and fail and try and adjust until something does fit. Because, guys, there is a finite amount of room in here and in here for a certain amount of priorities, and it's different for everybody. And if you don't identify what those things are, the world will identify those for you, whether you like it or not. But I want to talk about the evaluation period. So, well, let's talk about relationships for a second.
Sure.
Because this is something that I think a lot of people stumble on. So you're out there, you're trying new people, and that sounds like a very cursory term with regards to a person's value. That's not what I mean.
Yeah, gotta make that clear, because they're not just a thing.
Yeah, you're testing new relationships to see what fits. I'll say that. You're testing new relationships to see what fits. And
I could even go for testing people, I'm testing people to see who fits in my life.
Yeah.
That humanizes it a little more.
Actually, let me ask you this. Do you think somebody who is a serial dater, and I think the difference here, so there's a difference between somebody who's a serial dater and somebody who, with clear communication, is just trying out girls to see if he or she likes them. Okay. I'm thinking about somebody specifically, but I'll just say a guy. Okay. So this guy is dating lots of girls, and he's communicating, hey, honestly, I just want to get married. So I'm trying to find somebody that meets what I want and is going where I want to go. And I've gone through 12 girls, and I'm just being honest. It's not going to work between us. What's the difference between that clear communication and a serial dater?
The difference between someone who's putting in an honest effort and someone who's just dating around?
Sure, to get something out of it.
Well, I mean, that depends on the morality of the person entirely. If someone just thinks that a relationship is just something to be putting on, put on and off, kind of thing, and just like it makes me feel comfortable. These people make me feel comfortable. I mean, like that person could be just looking for the comfort without the commitment necessary to go and be in an actual relationship, and it's just yuck. Every relationship doesn't have to end towards marriage at all. That's not. I don't think that should necessarily be the goal. But it definitely shouldn't be something of just like, this person is here to fill a void in my life. No, like there's not a relationship size hole in your heart. There's a God-shaped hole in your heart, sure, but not a relationship sized hole, because people are imperfect. You keep trying to find the right person. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. And so even the person who's been through like 12 different relationships and no one seems to fit, I would barter to say that it is very potentially the person who's doing the dating that's the problem, not the people that he's trying to date. Because if you go through 12 people and all 12 of them are just no, like I've not even gone through 12 different relationships in the span of 18 to now. Like at least I don't think. I might be getting close to that number, but each time though there was always a part that I played in why it didn't work.
Yeah, but still, like, okay, so there's a difference between being picky and knowing what you want. And man, in the dating realm, that's really tricky, because people can have ridiculous standards. And,
yes,
not to dehumanize people, but if you're a 6 looking for a 12, it's like, chill, because I think we can have ridiculous standards for people, because I mean, finding somebody to be married to, if your view on marriage is such that it's a lifelong commitment, and it's an actual commitment,
it's a serious thing,
right? That's kind of scary. So I mean, it makes sense that you want to evaluate super.
Some people want to have the enjoyment of the relationship, but they don't want to put in the necessary work to be committed to the person in good times and in bad times. And there are plenty of bad times in every single person's life. So if you're going into a relationship for what you can get out of it, stop.
Yeah.
Stop right there, you fiend. Like, no, not a good idea, because it's not about what you can get out of the relationship, but rather what you can pour into it. If you are focused on pouring into someone's life and they're a healthy person, they're going to naturally pour into your life, and it will turn into a reciprocal, beautiful relationship. But if you're looking for what you can get out of the person, how they make you feel, and if they say all the right things and they're constantly complimenting you, whatever, it's like, that's not realistic. Like, they're going to have some bad days where work didn't go right, and, it's hot outside, and they have a headache, whatever. And there's just going to be things that are going to prevent them from being that perfect angel in your life. And so the relationship is not for filling a void, but rather you find someone who really empowers you and works well, because there is something to be got out of it. There is, out of a relationship. But you also are building into their life. It's mutual. You realize that they're a valuable human being, and I want them to succeed as much as I can possibly help them to succeed, because if that's happening, that's you putting fertilizer onto the relationship, making it stronger and healthier, and the person grows stronger, and then it just turns into a more reciprocal thing. I can't guarantee that that's always going to be the case, because sometimes it's hard to recognize someone who's not willing to put in all the effort. But that's why you want to take your time in dating anyways, and probably not rushing through things all the time, or trying to get straight to the good times, or whatever it is. I don't know, just serial dating.
Yeah. But here's the thing, guys. Here's the difference between serial dating and somebody that's dating with clear communication. You got to have an idea of where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, because there are so many, and I say this because I'm super guilty of this, man. If you just rewind 10 years and you see Tim in his 20s, there was not a lot of decision making that was happening. There was a lot of just falling into things and the freedom to try new things. I tried new things because they were put in front of me and I wasn't very intentional about them. And I was scared to try new things because I didn't want to fail. And when I tried something, I just accepted it because as a priority because it was present, right? I didn't really have foresight to say, okay, does this align with where I want to go? And that was true with a lot of my friendships. There were a lot of friendships that I had that took a lot of mental energy, emotional energy, financial energy to be a part of them. But I didn't ask myself, what am I trying to accomplish long term? Are these people going where I'm going? Are they the type of people that build me up as much as I try to build them up, and vice versa? So you have to know that first. Like the Cheshire Cat, when she was he or she, I don't know if there was a sex associated with it, with Alice in Wonderland. Alice was at a fork in the road and she asked the cat, which way should I go? The Cheshire Cat responds, well, where are you headed? And she said, I don't know, just tell me which way to go. And the Cheshire Cat said, well, if you don't know where you're headed, any path is fine. And the danger in that is you don't really have an evaluation period. You just fall into it and you accept it as a priority without making the decision for it to be a priority. So the evaluation period is so necessary because it's where you ask yourself, is this worth my resources? And if so, how much?
Yeah.
And the first qualifier before you can even get there is this potential priority aligning with where I want to go, right? So think about a job. How many of you right now are in a job where it meets your situation, it meets your circumstances, right? It doesn't really support your purpose, doesn't really support your giftings. It doesn't make you happy, it doesn't make you fulfilled. You're just going to work and, well, I get a paycheck. You come home and you just complain to your wife or husband, or you just numb out to video games or TV, right? What about relationships? How many of you have fallen into a relationship and maybe you've had a kid and you're thinking, I'm with this person because I have a kid with them. Or I'm in this relationship because I don't believe that anybody else is going to love me. Or how about hobbies, right? Maybe you are playing golf or you're in a sport and you hate doing it. You're just doing it because you're good at it, right? Because there's so much stuff I'm good at that I hate doing, you know? And it doesn't align with where you want to go, right? Or talking about hobbies, what about drinking? A lot of people drink as a hobby. A lot of people smoke as a hobby. A lot of people watch porn as a hobby. A lot of people play too many video games as a hobby, right? Are you making the decision to do that stuff? Or is that potential priority making itself a priority in your life because you're failing to choose one way or the other? That's a scary thought.
Yeah. It gets tricky, though, when you get into the relationship aspect. You're talking about the situation of, am I staying with this person because I have a child with them? That in and of itself, once you've gotten to the place where you have a child with a person, unless that person is being downright abusive and they're having sex with other people, I wouldn't say that just because it's unhappy that we should just get out. But I do think there's conversations that must be had, because you've now committed your whole body and produced a child with that person. And statistically speaking, when it comes to having a whole family or half a family, that makes a big difference in a child and their development socially, educationally, spiritually. It affects so many values to have both parents involved in that relationship. So just saying that, like, oh, I'm just here because I have a child, I would work on the relationship unless it's a situation where the spouse is abusive.
Well, I think that's really tough too, because in a split household where you have this parent that's going this direction, this parent that's going this direction, I get the model, guys. I totally understand it, where you want to stay together for the kids' sake, right? And making that a priority seems to make sense, but at the same time, the kid's going to pick up on certain things. The kid's going to pick up on, okay, well, this person, they're not valuing themselves. They're not creating healthy boundaries. There's not clear communication.
Yes, that's a problem. But also, I'm not suggesting that you just continue to do status quo. I'm suggesting that you begin working on that relationship now and improving it so that it does not remain that way, because you, unless you were forced into the relationship, made the decision to sleep with another person, and that produced a child. No one forced you into that. And so clearly there was something enough about that person that you wanted to be in relationship with them. I would say it'd be very important to continue to work on that relationship. And again, unless it is truly toxic and the people are being abusive in that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so we're talking about the evaluation period, right? And the last comment was, is this worth my resources? And if so, how much? So we take this, for example. If the child's welfare is worth your resources, if so, how much? You got to think about what you're allowing to be a priority in your life and what you're deciding to be a priority in your life. Because a lot of times, and what I've seen in the coaching that I do with families specifically, it's really easy to fall into a rut of just getting through the day,
Yes.
and not being intentional. When I sit down with people, I ask them, okay, well, list your top 4 or 5 priorities. And my old manager at GameStop, Rich, taught me this analogy of just imagine a little box, right? And you can fit 5 big rocks in that box, and everything else is sand that you fill in afterwards, right? If you put the sand in first, you can't fit all the rocks. But if you put the rocks in,
then you
can fit sand around it. But once again, all the sand won't fit. So in your day-to-day thought life, what are you making a priority? What are those 5 rocks for you? And so if somebody asks me that right now, I've got a wife. My wife is a main priority. My vocation is a main priority. Maintaining my responsibilities, which is like my house, my health, doing the dishes, like all the stuff in my house, that is a priority. My close relationship is priority. My relationship with God is like, those are my priorities, right? But if I'm not careful, I can allow sand, which would be things like the worries of social media, discretionary bills, things like, oh man, how am I going to afford going to Celebration Station and riding bumper car? We went to Frankie's out in Concord recently. That was fun. We did some go-karts. What about, oh man, I can't, I met this person at the gym and, we're supposed to have lunch and that's a potential relationship. Well, Tim, all your other relationships are starving. Why aren't you focusing on those priority relationships before this other, right? And
yeah.
It's one of those situations. Is this worth my resources? And if so, how much? So as you're going through that evaluation period, you got to understand, at one point, my wife was not my wife. She was my girlfriend.
Right.
Before she was my girlfriend, she was just somebody that I had interest in. And we would always go to Roots or the potluck. And I'd be like, hey, what's up, girl? But that was that testing period. And over time, I had to identify, okay, well, is this person worth my resources? Not dehumanizing them. It's just clarification for myself of alignment. Is this person worth the thought life, financial life, emotional life to support where I'm going?
Yeah, right? And that's pause, because hold up, because the time and place to determine whether or not a person in a relationship needs to be there as a priority is before you give yourself away to them physically and before marriage. If you don't decide that before that point, and then you get yourself into a sexual relationship, now you've given yourself away to someone. Like, sex is not just a casual thing. Sex is not a casual thing. And this is not old-time morality. This is not just a Christian thing. It is a very personal, very near and dear to it person, both men and women. And the minute you commit yourself to someone physically, you've gone to a standard of which should be reserved for marriage. I'm not here to shame people who've gone into before marriage. This is not the case, because we've all made mistakes. This is not that at all. I'm just trying to, for those who haven't gone down that path yet, to help you guys make a wise decision, because I've known, and here's why I say it's an important thing. I've known people who have gone into sex relationships before they got married, and the end result of that is that a lot of them go through multiple people before they finally find someone they want to stick with. And then by the time they get to that marriage and they're sticking with someone, their whole conscience is plagued with all the different people that they had sex before, and it chips away, for women, it chips away at their level of how they feel about themselves, their value.
Well, not just women, guys too.
Guys too, but like at least more vocally, women are faster to talk about that.
So what about people that don't believe in marriage?
I'm saying from a perspective of watching people outside the church, I have plenty of agnostic, atheistic friends, and I can see the effects of them living in a sexual relationship outside of marriage. It affects how you view yourself. If you're not making a person a priority to the point of marriage, and then you're deciding to give that part of yourself away, that's going to damage you. That's going to damage how you view relationships in general, create jadedness, how you view your own self-worth. And it's not a beautiful story. I've known enough people outside the church, inside the church, who have decided that I want to have a sexual relationship before marriage, and I've seen the results of that, and it's most of the time, I can't say all the time, because there's always outliners, but most of the time, it seems to damage how they view themselves and how they view other relationships, and causes them to be wary. It's just not worth it. You know, if you're going to give that most intimate part of yourself away, give it to someone who is an absolute priority, who loves you for who you are, who respects you, who lifts you up and challenges you, who is patient with you, who is willing to be there even when you're having a bad day, or if you're sick and terminal. Are they willing to be with you through sickness and health? Are they willing to be with you in riches and poverty? Because sex is a very personal thing, and that the person who receives it must be the highest priority besides God, honestly.
Well, likewise, just taking this on a tangent, I want to talk about priorities outside of a relationship, because what you're saying I agree with, and it's a big deal, but in the same regards, you got to treat your finances, you have to treat your emotional expenditures, you have to treat that the same as well. Because if you're waking up, and I'm so guilty of this, man, like I'll make emotional decisions on food so frequently. Man, we will go out and it's like, hey, let's eat out. Where you want to go? Like we did this the other day. We were at Renolda Gardens. We were just walking around, and yeah, we're trying to, hash out a budget, or not hash out. We're trying to stay true to the budget that I've set.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm the one that's been setting our budget. And I'm like, we're just walking around. I'm like, hey, you want to go to a Village Tavern? And if you've ever eaten at Village Tavern, you don't get out of there. It's a sit-down restaurant. You don't get out of there for less than $30 to $40 to $50. You don't. If you're a decent human being and you leave the tip that you should, because servers deserve tips, even if they've been crappy servers.
They do.
You're going to spend some money. So it's like, okay, is this a priority? No. And it's one of those things where I can allow my emotions to dictate what my priorities are. And that's a big thing, guys. So frequently do we allow our emotions to dictate our priorities after we've already decided this is going to be a priority. I actually had a client recently who gave me their word that they were going to commit to doing something. And they didn't do it, and I'm thinking to myself, well, why didn't they do it? And I'm just going through the different excuses they're going to give me of how they've made a decision not to stay true to their word, because I forget where in the Bible it says, I think Proverbs, it says, let your yes be yes and let your no be no, right? Or was that Jesus that said that? I don't recall. If you guys know,
it might have been Jesus, because he talked to the people not to make oaths, not by the stones of the temple or the hairs on your head or whatever, because all these stones will be torn down. You can't turn a hair on your head white, whatever. There's all these things, or the earth, because the earth belongs to God. Like, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. I think that was Jesus.
Yeah, because man, there is a premarital thing that I'm a facilitator for called SYMBIS, Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. And it goes through and asks all these questions, but in the financial section, it talks about a budget. And one of the common themes that I see when people are asked about their budget, the response is, I've made a budget, but I haven't stuck to it. I've made relationship declarations, but I haven't stuck to it. I've made personal resolutions, but I haven't stuck to it. And it's just, you got to keep revisiting, is this worth my resources? And if so, how much? And one of the partners I work with, Dave Martin, he's a goal setting and achievement coach. And it's all about rewiring your internal dialogue and being intentional about what you start with and what you end with at the beginning and the start of the day. Because if you wake up and you think, okay, well, what do I need to do? Oh man, I got all these deadlines and all these expectations and whatever. Part of renewing your mind daily is refocusing on what you need to make a priority.
Yeah.
Right? It's deciding, okay, which relationships am I gonna pour into? Where are my finances gonna go? How am I gonna steward my emotions? How am I gonna steward my physical health? Like, you have to be very intentional with that stuff daily.
And priorities are things that give you life and vitality. Like, that's the way you decide what is going to be a priority, person, place, or thing in your life. Because and I think people, and this is why there's the whole movement of like treat yourself, or I gotta watch out for me and stuff of that nature, because there's a truth in that. You do need to watch out for yourself, and there are moments where you do need to take care of yourself and stop throwing yourself at every little thing and not ever paying attention to where you're currently at and how healthy you are. But I think that the place that people usually get off on is when they're trying to take care of themselves, they go straight to comfort and comfort food and comfort people to take care of themselves. And comfort and health are not synonymous all the time. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you do desperately need to be comforted. Sometimes you need to be slapped. Sometimes you need to be in pain. Because if you look at reality, you're not going to get muscles unless you're in pain, building up those particular muscles by doing specific exercises.
So here's a funny story. Brandon, I'm going to pick on you for a second.
Oh. Please do tell.
Ariane has had me working out for the past year and a half. I don't want to say that. Initially, she had me working out, but now I identify, okay, I need to stop being lazy. I need to be more consistent. Now I need to work out without complaining. I don't always do that. I was complaining yesterday as we were working out. I was just pissed off. I'm like, I hate working out. But Brandon, at one point, I was challenging him on it because I'm like, if I'm doing this, Brandon should do this too. And I was like, Brandon, do you work out? He's like, yeah, I do 10 push-ups a day. I'm like, man, that's lame. And you said something like, we were talking about it, and you said something like, yeah, I just get to this point where my body starts telling me that it should stop. And I'm like, man, everybody experiences that. You get to this point where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. But that's part of it. And you hadn't had that realization until then.
Into that point, yes.
I just thought that was interesting because it's like...
You were in the process of pushing yourself to do like 100 push-ups a day for a month or something.
Yeah.
That was what... It's just like... But at the same time, I never realized that, part of the workout process is feeling like you're going to die. I had never pushed myself quite to that point. Now that I know that, I'm not as afraid to do that.
Well, going back to relationships, they're the same way. Not doing something until you're going to die. But if you look at how Jesus models love, it's through servanthood. It's about denying yourself for the betterment of another. I think in Proverbs it says, outdo one another in doing honor, And there's so many times in my relationship with my wife where I do things that I don't want to do, like dishes especially, or like she wants to watch a chick flick or something like that. And I don't really like chick flicks. Or like with friends, I go and I see certain movies that I don't want to see, and it's like, oh, I'm doing this. And it's because my priority outweighs this other thing that could be a priority if I make a personal decision or an emotional decision, right? And there's room there for communicating what you want, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, is this worth my resource? And if so, how much? Because sometimes you'll identify, okay, well, because I've decided this is a priority, there's a cost associated with that, which I want to go into the final part of this, making the decision. So the title of the stream, if you came from Facebook, the event that we posted was how to transition something temporary into a priority.
Yes. Part-time to full-time.
Yeah. Which is relevant for us, Brandon.
Yes, I know.
And so a declarative thing I want to say is that you have finite space. You only have a certain capacity for everything. You don't have the capacity to work 7 full-time jobs, much like you don't have the capacity to have 5 wives, unless you're Solomon.
He didn't really have the capacity to have 5 wives.
Nobody does. That's just a bit. But
he didn't have the capacity to have 2,000 wives. What are you doing, Solomon? Stop.
Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is you have going back to that analogy, in your box, you only have space for so many big rocks. And it's up to you to identify what that space is. You have to identify that. You have to. Because once again, if you don't, something else will. Right? So with your finite space, as you're going through the process of trying new things and evaluating new things, right? So for instance, if I have a car and I love this car, right? I have it for 4 or 5 years and my lifestyle changes and I now no longer need a Mini Cooper because I drive a Mini Cooper. It's super small. I now need an SUV or something.
Because you have a child.
Hell no. Well, like if I had a child or if like I needed to tow stuff or whatever, right? I would have to reevaluate what takes this spot, right? And so you have to ask yourself, what does this trade for? Because you can't keep adding big rocks to your life. You know, think about somebody wearing a backpack. You can only fit so much in that backpack before you can no longer carry it.
Yes.
And if you keep adding stuff, what was previously your load now becomes somebody else's burden because somebody has to carry it, right? So what does this trade for? Brett, how do you identify that this new thing should become a priority and take place of this thing that was previously a priority?
You have to figure out, again, just going back to what's giving you life, vitality, because there's a time where a certain relationship may be very important and life-giving. So, for instance, my first real close friend, as I was coming out of a season around high school where I was super dry and had no close friends whatsoever, very important priority relationship, helped me a lot and had a lot of patience for me, given I was like a magnet to them, to him in particular, because it's like, ooh, friend, come to me. But over the years, we have diverged, and he has gone off in directions that I know that if I were to keep him close to my heart, in the sense of like the ear that I give to him, it would drive me into a direction I don't want to head that's counterintuitive to healthiness and my value and things of that nature. And I know I can't keep giving priority to that person anymore because it would damage me. Not because I don't love him, not because, he doesn't mean the world to me. He still does. And if he were to come back, then boom, my friend all over again. But it's no longer a life-giving friendship. So I had to draw back from that friendship. So I guess looking, is it no longer giving you life? Like, you can, sometimes we get stuff in our lives that are very important for that season. Like, for instance, you might have cassettes in the 80s, very great. Your music is on that. Wonderful. But then comes CDs, and they take up less space, and they don't have all that wire, or not wire, but the film that's on the inside of it that messes up. You can continue to hold on to those cassettes, but now they're less of a life-giving thing and more of a burden because they're just going to take up space in your closet and or basement. Or for instance, I have memories I hold on to that are life-giving, like little things that people will give me. Like one memory I'm about ready to throw away is this little thing called Darth Paper that this Darth Paper, let me tell you, there was this cute kid I met at Applebee's years ago. We had a conversation about Star Wars. Maybe it was because the new Star Wars movie, the episode 3 had just come out or something. We were talking about that. And he was so excited about that. As they left, him and his family went to a table, he took this the kids menu that he had, folded it up into a relative shape of Darth Vader, and then came back and gave it to me. And I was just like, oh my god, it's my heart. And then I've held on to that forever since that. But now I haven't seen that kid since that point. He's probably a teenager, if not an adult. So it doesn't have the same purpose to me anymore. It's become trash. It's now trash, Darth trash.
Well, that's kind of interesting too, because I've got little keepsake boxes and stuff. That sounds very like granny-ish, but I like things. I'm a gift person, and so I keep little souvenirs and trinkets. I'm just thinking, like, when I die or get raptured, whatever the situation is, the people after me, I'm thinking like 2 or 3 generations later, they're gonna look at this and,
what is this?
What is this, right?
Yeah.
And unless I become famous or something, it's just gonna be stuff in a box and they're gonna throw it away.
Right.
But we do have a knack for hanging on to things longer than we should.
Right.
And this goes back to what we're talking about.
We're thinking
right
about
now.
a job. You start a job as a single young man, then you get married and you have kids, and you're still with the same job. Problem, probably, because there's probably a better job that pays better, that will allow you to support your family better in that situation, depending on what role your wife is playing. If your wife is, equally making money with you, maybe not so much of a big deal. If she's more so taking care of the family, might want to consider a better job for that situation. However, you two agree to do things together. So that might be a thing too. It's like this job, like if I were to still be working at Bounce U today in a minimum wage job, I can't do that anymore. Not a young teenager with no job experience. My next job needs to be, either something in management or whatever, or this, just whatever will open up the door for me next.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's that putting away childish things type of same ordeal. What currently is life-giving? What currently is able to suit you to take care of your current needs and requirements and stuff?
Yeah. Guys, you got to look at it like this. As you go through life, your priorities are kind of like a recipe, right? So last night I made grilled chicken with basmati rice and this butter chicken Indian sauce and some naan bread.
Sounds good.
Right? And then tonight I might make some Thai food or something. Tomorrow yesterday we also, for Arian's birthday, we went to Concord and we made burgers with potato salad and everything just worked, right? And your priorities are the same, guys.
I love potato salad.
If you go through life seasons and you don't reevaluate your priorities, that's kind of like having sauerkraut with pancakes. On their own and with a certain combination of items, it's a meal. But your life priorities are a unique symphony of things that play together super well to support your current forward motion, right? And so when you're looking at your finite space of priorities and you're evaluating what those rocks are, you need to evaluate all of them, right? Because at one point in my life, I was focused 90% of my thought life, my education, my resource, my emotions, my finance, 90% of that was going into a business that I was trying to do. I was doing multi-level marketing. So of course, major focus on this. You and your family know all about that.
Yes.
And now, if I had that same zeal for my vocation that I did then, currently, my wife would my relationship with her would starve. My relationship with my friends would starve. I had to reevaluate my priorities and how I delegate my resources to them.
Yeah.
So as you go from season to season to season, you need to evaluate, okay, how much of my resource does this get? This, and do all these work together? Am I trying to eat sauerkraut with pancakes? Because, guys, so long, and if you are one of these people, I might be talking about you. If so, I would encourage you to change things or look at things. If not, that's okay. But
listen,
in my job at GameStop, I saw people come in so frequently, a lot of my regulars, their life would be falling apart and they would sate themselves with immediate gratification of whatever new plush came out or a statue or something. And meanwhile, their lights are getting cut off, or, man, you need to buy new clothes. Everything's got holes in them, But you have to identify those. What priorities are relevant to my current life situation? how am I applying my resources, and does all of this align with where I want to get? It all goes back to the purpose on your life. What exactly are you doing? And if your answer is nothing, my heart goes out to you. That's a comfortable place, but over time, it just gets worse and worse. It's like, it's a life debt, man. You don't realize that you're accruing interest until you get 5, 10, 20 years down the road. I'm talking from experience. Man, my first 28 years of life was like that. I didn't realize I was in debt to my life because I wasn't making things a priority. And because I wasn't making things a priority, life was making things a priority for me. And because I wasn't spending the resources necessary to fulfill those priorities, I was accruing debt, man. And I don't mean just financial debt. I mean emotional debt. I mean physical debt. Like all my life until I was like 24 or 25, I drank nothing but soda because I was not educated on sugar is bad for you. Soda has a ton of sugar. I didn't realize that one can of Coke has as much sugar as a dessert. And so me drinking 8 cans of Coke per day or 8 Pepsis was killing my body. I didn't realize that spending 90% of my paycheck as a young adult on video games and a new version of Windows or a $30 white t-shirt of Banana Republic, I didn't realize, because I wasn't focused on my purpose and where I was going, I didn't realize that me focusing on that life was making all these priority decisions for me. And oh, wait, why did my car get repossessed? You know? I don't know, guys. It's such a big deal to focus on your priorities and be willing to try new things. Even if your priorities are identified, it's so important to keep evaluating new things to see if they should replace one of your current priorities. Speaking about relationships, guys. Is your relationship life-giving, as Brandon's saying? And does it support where you want to go? Or has it stunted and you're just in it because you're in it? Your job too. Is it taking you where you want to go, or is it just meeting your circumstances? Right? What about the way you spend money? Is it just making you feel good, or is it taking you where you want to go? And that one hits home for me right now because our goal is paying off our mortgage, and the way I've been budgeting has not been supporting that goal. But I guess I want to close with this last question is, once you've identified your priorities, how do you maintain them in a consistent, healthy way?
I would say have support. Honestly, don't do it alone, because trying to maintain your priorities by yourself is very challenging, because there are easy ways your mind can justify not doing something you need to be doing. One of the things that I just actually requested my mom to help me with, since I'm with her right now at the moment, is to encourage me to go out there and find new supporters for thoughtraid. Because that's something I can do. It's just very emotionally challenging to do that because of the rejection that can come behind it and the exhaustion of going from person to person to person to person. So that's that. Sometimes it's really good to have another person who can support you to do things you don't want to do, and to give them the authority to say things you don't want to hear in such a way that would allow you to be discomforted by them saying it, rather than to tell them to stop because they're making you feel discomfortable or uncomfy. Discomfortable, which is not technically a word, but deal with it. But
that's a quote. Brandon, deal with it.
Deal with it.
Shit's come down.
Edit that in. But anyways, having another person to help you specifically is really important, because again, it's just sometimes there's things you won't do until someone is there saying you should do this. But I think another way is just, there are some things that have to be settled in your head. Like if you don't see the value to holding to a specific standard you need to do, go out, find resources that can help you see the value in it. So for instance, one of the things that I've been doing, one of my priorities is to keep myself sexually pure, and to not allow myself to wander to porn. The way I am helping myself do that right now...
Reset the counter.
Reset the counter.
Dang it.
We're back down to 0.
Days without mentioning porn.
Boop. One of the things I've been doing is I have been watching stuff from Fight the New Drug about people who've been in the porn industry and the plight they've been through. And it's very sobering, but that helps me see the heart, the people behind the porn, which then makes me want even less because I recognize, ooh, that person was in sex trafficking. This person didn't even think that their images was going to end up all over the web.
Oh, this person might be 16.
That person may be 8. Like
Are they really that young?
There could be as young as babies sometimes in the most extreme cases. Yes.
Ew.
There was a ring that had to be shut down in the Philippines that was doing molesting infants. So that's a thing. That is a thing. If you want to deep search deep enough,
No,
please don't.
Don't search that.
Don't search that. Stop right there. Let me spare you. But that's been very helpful. Whenever you don't want to do something, look into why is it important that I do this. And not be biased about it. Because sometimes we know we need to do something, but then we go searching for all the evidence that suggests contrary to what we know we need to do. That's not helpful. If you know you need to do something, don't waste your time with the counter argument. I know there's a point to being balanced, but if you know you need to do something, you know this is deep inside of you. This is not just a head thing that you're anxious about, but it's a heart thing that you know, I'm going to be royally screwed if I don't do this. Go and find the information you need to help give you the courage necessary to do the thing. In the case of eating healthier, look at the ramifications for eating unhealthy and use that as a reminder when you feel tempted not to eat healthy, like, oh, I don't want to have the risk of getting type 2 diabetes. I don't want to have a shortened life because I want to feel good in this moment. You know, that can be very helpful when it comes to, you know, keeping up with your priorities. When it comes to relationships, keeping someone a priority in your life, I think with that one, you have to keep an idea of the realism of it. Like, you got to realize that love is not a feeling. It's a decision that must be made to prioritize this person over other people and to treat them well, even when you don't necessarily feel like treating them well. It's a decision that must be made. And so that decision comes with the understanding that some days they're going to be very supportive and helpful, and you're going to feel the lovey-dovey, warm feelings, and sometimes they're not going to be in a good state, but that doesn't change your commitment to them and your love to them because you've seen over the dating process and now going into the marriage what they've done for you, and you keep that in front of you when you feel tempted to look at the small things they're doing wrong here and there and allow that to detract your entire relationship with them.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a way that you keep them a priority in your life, because if you magnify all their mistakes and all the things they're not doing, you're not going to keep that relationship in a priority in your life for much longer. Excuse me, I'm having an increasing amount of spit building up in my mouth.
Well, guys, we do need to come to a close soon, but
Hey.
something I want to recommend to you. So the question is, once you establish priorities, how do you maintain them in a reasonable and consistent manner? My wife is she's a nurse, and she previously was in behavioral health. Mm-hmm. And years ago, she worked at a place where it was behavioral, something about kids with, oh gosh, what was it? A behavioral institute for kids or whatever. I forget what it was. But sometimes you just have to realize you're not going to be at a place where you're capable of maintaining your priorities in a way that are healthy. That's because a lot of times if you are growing and if you're trying new things and if you're actively chasing something that's bigger than you, you're going to enter into spaces where the priorities that you need to manage require a cost for which you cannot pay the bill, right? And that's normal because we're designed for a relationship. We're designed for community. We're designed to help each other. Proverbs says, a brother is born in adversity, because when you meet adversity, you need other people.
I'm born for a time of adversity specifically.
Yeah. And so what I want to recommend is find a handful of people that you trust. And they don't have to be people that you have secure relationships with. They could be somebody that you have to say, hey, I respect you. I admire you. Could I sit at your feet and ask you some questions? Can I get your perspective, right? And ask them for critical, how do I want to say this? Ask them for criticism. Ask them for very honest answers and very honest perspective on specific priorities in your life. Say, hey, my budget is this. Here's where I want to go. Are the decisions that I'm making lining up? And be honest, right? Because you have to understand that your circumstances are not who you are. Your actions are not who you are. All that is separate, right? All that can change. All your circumstances can change. All your actions, your behaviors can change, and they're supposed to. That's what happens as you grow and mature. You don't change, your value doesn't change, your actions and your decisions do.
Yeah.
And those have to change, and they have to evolve to line up with bigger priorities. You can't continue doing what you're doing currently and go someplace that you've never been that's bigger than you. You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at it as a plant. A plant will continue to grow to a certain point and outgrow its containment, depending on the type of plant. Especially if you look at God uses mustard seed as an example of this. You have a faith the size of a mustard seed. It's the smallest of seeds, but it grows into one of the biggest of garden plants. As a plant grows from that teeny little seed, you're going to have to move whatever's containing it. And let's just flat out in the field, like I kind of imagine it's like pots. You put it in this pot, it outgrows the pot. You have to move into another pot, so it's bigger than the last one, or a bigger field until eventually, it can fully grow out to what it needs to be. It's the same. You're gonna have to move to bigger things. Not the same place you were before is not going to support you in the next place you're going to go.
Yeah. Well, kind of bringing this full circle and just talking about a personal experience, I'm going to close with this. I made my wife a priority, and so every Wednesday at 6:30, we have a conversation. We've been going for a walk, and we just say, hey, how have I been doing? What do you need me to change? Do you feel loved by me? Do you feel heard by me? And that's a very appropriate question to ask of a priority. And so I was talking earlier about, is this worth my resources? And if so, how much? Sometimes your emotional resources, being willing to be vulnerable and honest, right? So if you have a relationship with somebody, and this goes back to that conversation we had with Chelsea about intimacy and commitment and the relationship between the two, if I'm committed to her in marriage, I need to give her the intimacy of being willing to be vulnerable, right? And being willing to change and being willing to ask her how she feels and what she's going through, even if I can rationalize why she shouldn't feel that way. So husbands, pay attention. That is a big lesson. I'm still learning it. But I have to protect time with that. Thursdays also. Thursdays are date days. I try my absolute best to protect those days. And Brandon and I were talking earlier, because what we do with thoughtraid is a priority for me too. But for my relationship with my wife, my marriage is a bigger priority. So Brandon, what did I tell you about Thursdays?
You can't do Thursdays.
Thursdays are off limits.
Yeah.
Thursdays are off limits because I've made that a decision, right? And beyond that, I made a decision with my wife to be accountable and ask her questions because I admire her and I respect her.
Yeah.
I also have male friends where they're also married and they have more perspective than me. I'm like, hey, here's something I'm trying to figure out in my marriage. Like, can you help me? Right? So if you're going through this and you don't know how to manage your priorities or stay accountable to them, find a group of people that you respect, that walk the walk and have already been there, not somebody who has ideas, right? Like Brandon would not make a good marriage counselor because he's never been married. I mean, he has good perspective on that, but he's never done it. Right?
I've never been in this, I couldn't tell you.
And I'm not a doctor. I can't teach you how to, I don't know, cut somebody open, right?
Nope.
So, yeah.
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 I think that's good.
Yeah, guys. So we're closing out. I want to throw this out there. If you need help with any of this,
yeah,
you are welcome to hire us. We do life coaching, we do ministry, we do all sorts of stuff like that. So if you need help with this in a group setting, we are looking for the rest of the year to speak to groups, to people, to businesses, whatever. So yeah, that is an open door. If we can help you in any way, shoot us a message. If you'd like for us to talk or expand on any of this in a thought raid, shoot us a message at thoughtraid@gmail.com. We'd love to do that too. We are going to be hosting live events weekly now, 3 times a week.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you haven't done so, like and subscribe to us on Facebook or YouTube.
Yes.
The event notification will come up, and that's all free. So we'd love to have you, and we'd love your participation.
Essentially, we are going to be going back to our regular scheduled Mondays, Get Naked Mondays. Fridays, we're going to be having our conversation piece, the thing that we're planning on talking about, which... If you have anything you'd like for us to talk about, let us know, because our goal is to serve you. So if there is something that is really on your mind, we would love to talk about that, bring the perspectives that God has given us and the things we've studied and lived through. So let us know whether it's a current event or you want us to speak to some way of a thought life or something, some kind of thing you're currently dealing with. Whatever it may be, let us know. We'll definitely do the best that we can. And then Saturdays, we want to have special guests. And if you know anybody in particular you'd like to see if we can get on to Thought Raid, let us know. We're open to reaching out to all different types of people, of different types of businesses, of walks of life, ages, whatever. We love to bring many different perspectives and whatever thought life they've currently got. Let us know whatever you want us to talk about and who you want us to talk to. Let us know.
Yeah. You want to hit the button for me?
Yes.
And guys, if you like what we do and you just want to support us, visit us at patreon.com/thoughtraid.
Yes. That's a great way to support us on a monthly basis. And we will see you again Monday at 4 p.m.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive.
So much better about doing this. So much better.
You're alive. We sing Jesus.
I recognize, Tim, that even if all the gaming does work, there's a level of confidence that I'm only able to get